Okay, so today we'll make a big leap and go to the Uncle Sam's dreamland and talk about Islam in America. Uh, the story of Islam in America has got two lines that eventually came to an intersection. One started by someone called W.D. Fard, and one led by Malcolm X. Let's start with the first one. Well, in the 1930s, there was a big economic and social and even racial crisis in America. It was economic, but those who suffered most were the blacks. So this atmosphere of poverty, hunger, despair, came a small black man, Chinese looking, was a peddler in the streets of Detroit, who started speaking to the blacks about Islam and the Nation of Islam. But after 3 days of preaching, the small man disappeared, and no one knows up to now how he disappeared and what was his destiny. But amongst his small group was a clever young man called Elijah Poole, who would become Elijah Muhammad. This Elijah managed to spread the preachings and the message of Islam in a more dynamic way and set his HQs in the Windy City, Chicago, Illinois. Well, this is the first line. The second line is that of Malcolm. Well, Malcolm's tragedy started even before he was born. He was still in his mother's womb when a group of KKK came to their house and smashed the window panes and set some fire and threatened his father because his father used to preach the return of the black Americans or Afro-Americans to Africa. He saw the only solution for this bitter segregation and sufferings of the blacks. But the KKK, the white supremacists, didn't like that. They eventually killed the man, Malcolm's mother, and pretended that he killed himself. So the life insurance he had contracted for his wife and children after his death, because he knew he would die a violent death. The mother was denied this insurance. The insurance company said, your father killed himself, and the mother became insane. So Malcolm lost his father and his mother. He will also lose his right to school, because at school he suggested, he was asked by his teacher, what would you like to do in the future? And little Malcolm said, I would like to be a lawyer. But his teacher said, you have to be realistic because you're black. You can be a carpenter like Jesus, but not a lawyer. So he left school and went to the jungle of New York City as a shoe polisher. And soon he started mixing with drug peddlers, with prostitutes, etc. And eventually he made his own gang for night robberies. It consisted of 2 white girls and 2 other black men. And he kept stealing from time to time and living in luxury with the girls, etc. But one time he stole an expensive watch. He took it to be repaired by a Jew, and this Jew called the police, and he was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. But the justice court and the judges were very funny, because they regretted that the blacks had stolen the white man's women, not the robberies. But in school, the line of Islam, the line of Malcolm would intersect. But at first Malcolm was an atheist. He didn't believe in God, he cursed Jesus, etc. But he eventually converted to Islam and became an intellectual. He read most of the books in the library of the prison. So he was paroled and freed, and he could join Chicago and Elijah Muhammad and became the spokesman of the Nation of Islam. But in 1962 came the assassination of JF Kennedy, President Kennedy, and Malcolm was a VIP. The mass media was asking him questions, and he said, "Chicken came home to roost." And this Elijah didn't like. He said, Kennedy was loved by the people. He did something good for the blacks. He was even trying to stop the war in Vietnam. So he silenced him, and this was an opportunity for Malcolm to go to Hajj, Saudi Arabia. They were good Salafists, but they were outraged by this black Islam that said Islam is the religion of the blacks, and all the whites were blue-eyed white devils. They said Islam is universal, it's open to any race, to anybody. So he went back to the US and opened a new mosque to teach the true Islam and defend the civil rights of the blacks, but he was assassinated in 1965. But his movement continued with Martin Luther King and Eldridge Cleaver and